So welcome everyone to today's edition of SIG Instrumentation meeting. Today is the 20th of January, and I will remind everyone that the meeting is recorded, so be nice to each other, and I think we can kick off the meeting. Should I share my screen to share the agenda, maybe?
Feel free. I dropped the agenda in the chat. Oh, maybe our first order of business should be an announcement. We have a new tech lead.
Yay.
You want to do the intros?
Yeah, Damien is our new tech lead. Everyone give Damien a round of applause.
Warm round of
Yay.
applause. And
welcome.
As his reward for becoming
Thanks.
tech lead, we're making him run today's meeting. So
It's nice, I was completely ready for it.
yeah, as we can see. Do we even have Francesco? I feel like he put an item on the agenda. That's F. Romani. He put an item on the agenda, and then I don't know that he's been able to attend. So I've just been kind of punted.
Yeah, I'm not seeing
not
him
here, so
in the attendee list, yeah. So I guess we can go to David's point about
Sounds
metric
good.
deprecation.
Alrighty, so I'm still trying to decide what my opinion on this is. So Jordan and Wojciech both, they're making some edits to deprecation policies for API versions, but they came across the deprecation policy for stable metrics and are suggesting that maybe we as a group should reconsider our current deprecation policy, which is, I think it's deprecated for a few releases and then it can be removed. So I just wanted to raise this because I don't think everyone was CC'd on here. And yeah, get people's opinions. I think we should stick with the status quo unless we feel strongly that it should change, but I just wanted to see
I
if
want to
anyone-
be able to delete metrics. Stable metrics.
Yeah. Stable metrics are not stable APIs. This is specifically talking about APIs, like, you know, for example, apps v1 kind of thing.
Yeah,
this is not the same thing as metrics.
No, I agree. They're suggesting that we should follow in their footsteps for metrics and treat them as stable
they
APIs.
want us to treat this as permanent APIs.
I don't think that necessary. Well, I guess
don't think it's necessary because we're going to end up with blanket metrics that end up not being used if some code becomes obsolete that doesn't functionally do anything, but we're locked into keeping it around forever because we have a policy.
So one thing that I would maybe add, because this came up in a call earlier in the week, is like, what do we do if, for example, we find like a metric cardinality explosion or something like that? Like, for example, that CVE that we had where people could put like outrageous things in for an HTTP method, but that metric is stable. Like, if our stability policy means we can't like do anything to it, then doesn't that mean that like we're stuck with a CVE? Like, I think we need to be able to like patch that sort of thing, or our guarantees need to be able to handle that sort of thing. So I was wondering if we should also have a policy that stable metrics must have like strictly bounded cardinality or something like that.
But at the end of the day, like even if the problem occurs, like the unbounded cardinality will only be on a label, not the whole metric. So I don't think we would have to remove the metric completely, like although maybe it will lose lots of expressiveness if we remove a label.
Yeah, but I think our policy says we can't change, like, we can't like blank out a label of a stable metric either.
Yep.
Yeah, but like the use case I would have is that if we ever find a CVE, we would have to patch it down to 3 versions of Kubernetes at least.
It's not a problem. This is not a problem.
Okay.
Like if we have unbounded cardinality, we have mechanisms for bounding that. Like we can do an allow list approach, which caps the label values.
But that's
And
not
then-
currently a requirement. requirement for stable metrics. That's why I'm saying maybe we should make it one.
Yeah, but I'm saying that we don't, yeah, for sure. No, for stable metrics, this is like literally the only thing we can do because we have a policy.
Because otherwise we
around-
can't touch them, other than like removing them after
Well,
a very
no,
long
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
right now, because of our policy with stable APIs, we cannot remove the label. Therefore, what I am suggesting is the only thing we can do. And it is an acceptable
Yes.
solution for the CVEs, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, but I'm saying if we ensure that that is a requirement going in, like if we ensure that they have bounded cardinality, we don't have to worry about like retroactively adding that to them or something like that. But I mean, in any case, I think part of the problem here is like what we've previously discussed many times with like our metric stability policy, where like it kind of loosely follows API stability, but like we don't have a beta, and like alpha and stable are kind of misleading because they don't really mean the same things as alpha, beta, GA for like either features or for APIs. So maybe we want to like rename them and proceed with our proposal to like change the way that metrics stability works, because it's confusing everyone. Like, I agree. I think we want to be able to remove metrics because otherwise, like, they're much more of an implementation detail. I mean, and maybe we say that like you can't add stable metrics that like where code potentially could be removed. Like, so long as we have an API server serving requests, we're always going to have request duration, right? So like that's not really a risk. We could realistically say that we keep that forever, but I can think of maybe other things that might
If
not.
webhooks go away or something.
Yeah, if webhooks go away.
Yeah, if webhooks go away, then basically like the webhook, stable webhook metrics don't make sense anymore.
Did you raise that as a possible thing in the thread?
No, I haven't been able to respond to it. I've been bouncing around, but I have been thinking about it and I will respond to it. I did see the email in my queue.
Possibility. There is also another possibility I see. When I went through the code of like the registry that we are using for like the API stability, I noticed that we can hide some metric.
We can deprecate. No, they get
yeah.
deprecated and they get hidden, and then you delete them. So like you can enable them. So like the reason why we have this escape hatch, right, is because basically we are giving people a one release window for them to re-enable a metric, unbreak their ingestion pipeline, and then migrate to the next metric. Right? So like we auto hide it and you can explicitly re-enable that deprecated metric. It will, but that causes you to consciously turn it back on, knowing it will be gone next release. That is the reason why it exists, right? Like,
yeah, but
you're shepherding
to do
them.
something similar to what the API live team like what they are doing for the API. Like, if a metric is stable and like we want to deprecate it or whatever, we just hide it forever, and then if any users needs it at some point, they can always turn it on, and we like as a group don't need to care about it anymore. Like they just can allow the use of this metric.
Well, we wouldn't be able to delete the code paths if we did that, and
yeah,
need to.
What do you like? And you basically have to have this like skeleton of a metric forever. That makes no sense, right? Like, if webhooks disappear, we're gonna retain the webhook metric, and then it's just gonna be like, well, like it's gonna be broken anyway, because like if it's not instrumenting anything, it's actually not gonna appear in the public API. So like your scrapes will still break, right? Like that's an argument for actually removing stable metrics, right? Because like if they actually become unused, they will not appear and they will break ingestion anyway.
Well, Han, perhaps what SIG Arch is suggesting is those things, like anything that is possibly going to be removed from Kubernetes should never become stable, because that violates our stable guarantees. So like if there's any possibility of like, this feature might go away, meaning that these metrics will go away, then it can't be a stable metric.
Or should we just add an exception clause? Like the only case in which a metric can be removed is if the behavior it's describing no longer occurs. Like, I can't tell you how long this thing took because we're not doing that anymore. It still seems useful to be able to describe something as stable, and clearly there is some confusion over using the word stable to describe something that isn't actually that stable. But
Well,
maybe
it's
exceptions are too
stable.
hard.
A stable. I mean, stable occurs. It's a spectrum of stability, right? Like you have things that are not stable, and then you have things that are like more stable. You can rely on something like the amount that you can rely on something is not like, you know, a polar thing. like you can rely on something more. It's like it's a qualitative attribute. You can rely on something more or less than something else, right? Like
I get that. And
it's not binary is what I'm saying, right? It's not like a true false, like in my opinion.
I agree. I guess we've defined our spectrum as what, alpha and stable, and so
Yeah, and we
we don't have a notion of super stable, which is sort of what they're asking for, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, really, it maybe was a mistake to not have a beta, but we sort of were like, well, we don't know if we're going to need it.
I have the to do kept for that, but
yes, I think the to do cap is possibly where we want to like raise this stuff, or at least come up. I mean, if we're just making a policy, it doesn't necessarily have to be a cap per se, although I guess if we're making changes to
it's going to be code changes,
code,
right? Because
then, yeah.
we actually need like static analysis for beta, and we need like, yeah.
Well, I don't know that it'll be that much more work beyond like what we would be doing in a policy in terms of like writing it down. So I think everybody's going to have to like kind of duke it out in terms of
I mean, we
wanna
basically
see.
got sign off from Arch for the beta stuff. They're down with it. We circulated the idea, and then basically I ran out of bandwidth to do it.
So to resolve this, should we just link to, or say that we're going to tackle
let
this
me-
topic as part of the discussion on the KEP?
Let me circle around to it. I will reply. I have been meaning to reply, but yeah, I will reply today after this meeting. Okay. I mean, yeah. Is there anything else on the agenda, or is that primarily it?
I think that was the only item that we had. I also
Yeah, it was the only item.
I forgot to remind us about the upcoming release dates, if people want me to do that.
Is this the last meeting before the KEP freeze?
That's a
I
good
think
question.
so.
I think it technically is because KEP freeze is like the same day as our next meeting. So should we super
so-
quickly go over
Mm,
like the list of caps that we pulled in for the release? I can share my screen if you want, because I was the one who put them in the collection sheet.
yeah, please do it.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. What are you doing? Zoom enhance.
I have a question about the stable metrics. So yeah, so currently I think there are two options. One is to delete some metrics, another one to modify or update some metrics. So currently we are, I think for delete metrics, we hope we can delete some metrics later, but for update or like modifying some metrics, so it's supported or not supported if the metric status is stable.
I'm sorry, I don't
Sorry.
understand the question.
Yeah, so I'm saying that So currently, if the metric is stable, in the future, we might have two kinds of options. One is to delete it. Another is to change the metric's name, for example.
No,
No, we
changing the
can't change
metric's
it if
name.
it's stable.
Changing the metric's name is deleting it,
Oh, okay.
right? Because you are effectively removing that metric.
Yes. Okay, can everybody see enhancements?
Yes.
Okay, so I put in 5 enhancements for us for this release. Basically everything with a question mark I didn't add. And let me show you what I pulled, and then you can tell me if your favorite cap is missing. For example, we may decide that we want to do something with the metric stability stuff because we need to. So here are the 5 that I pulled. So API server tracing, going to beta. Kubernetes system components log sanitization is being deprecated. Kubelet open telemetry tracing is hopefully going to alpha. Deprecate klog specific flags and Kubernetes components, hopefully going to beta. And contextual logging, which is a new thing from Patrick, I think is maybe going to alpha, assuming that we do it for this release. I'm not sure if there's going to be consensus for that one. Is there anything else? We discussed a lot of things, but a lot of them were like question marks. So like, I don't know if we committed to metric cardinality enforcement.
Yeah, this one, yes. It's just
So-
like there is no need to update the cap. It's just like some implementation that needs to be done.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
so I have not heard from Clayton on this one. I think that this is being superseded by Patrick's cap, perhaps.
I don't believe
That's
so.
the contextual logging. You don't believe so?
So we originally had their cap, and it involved both a contextual logging piece and a trace ID propagation piece. And we asked them to tackle only the trace ID propagation piece and not the contextual logging piece.
I see. Oh, so it's
So that's-
separate.
It's
Okay.
separate, yeah. They did respond to me. I need to get back to them.
Okay.
I doubt that it'll make that we'll be able to reach consensus by the cap deadline, but I'll keep working with them for now.
Okay. So structured logging is not going anywhere. So yeah, metric stability classes was one question mark. And the other thing that I had a question about was the graduation of these metrics APIs. This seems to have been moved to 125, and I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. I think at the beginning, like Shui planned it for 125. Like
Oh,
at
okay.
least that's what I've seen on
Okay.
his issue. And I'm
And
doing the
that's-
same for the two others because like we don't
That's
have
fine.
enough time to look into that.
Yeah, I suggested, I mean, since these are all like just subdomains of metrics.k8s.io, I think we should just do it as one cap, like a single cap, because it's all basically the same thing, rather than trying to have to track 3
Yes,
different things.
yes,
It's going to make it much
yes.
harder for us. 'Cause,
Yes.
like, I'm going to have to go and
Lit-
review 3 different things instead of one thing, which is basically the same.
I personally think that it's a bad idea because like even though like we'll have 3 cap to follow, if we merge all these initiatives together, like each API has specific change that needs to be done that isn't related to the other
I'm
one.
just,
So
But wait,
I think Elena is making this suggestion because the process overhead of each individual cap is extremely
Well,
high.
it's not just that. Like, I don't see what the difference would be in any of these cases, right? Like, if we're graduating these to GA, all it means is we're taking a bunch of files and moving them from like beta to V1. Like, is there anything else that needs to be done to graduate these?
yeah. Some like maybe we don't want to graduate to GA all of them because like there are changes that needs to be done to the APIs. Like for example, the metrics API, like the resource metrics API, we wanted to add a new field to it to kind of expose the information from C groups because like you don't have access yet to like for pod metrics, you don't have access to all the data from the pod itself. You only have
Well,
access to like the resource usage and memory usage of the
yeah,
containers.
that'll make sense to me, but I wouldn't expect that to happen when we're graduating it. I would expect us to add that field, and then once it's stable, then we just basically take the beta API and rename it as V1, right? Like, because otherwise we're stuck with the stable deprecation policy where we can never remove the thing. So I would definitely say we should not be adding fields going into GA. Like when we want to GA the thing, it should be done, like it's ready to go.
We can
So in that
also
case,
add
what
fields
we
after
should
GA, right? Sorry.
Yeah, you can add
Okay.
fields after GA, and they can be versioned with the feature flag and all that. So that is also possible.
So what would be the best? Like, should we graduate to GA and then do the change, or I don't know, create a new version, like let's say V1 beta 2 or whatever?
I think it really
Do the
depends.
change and then graduate to GA.
It depends on what the change is. There's no reason to add a new API version if it's a compatible change. So I don't know what the changes that you're suggesting are, so I can't tell you off the top of my head if it's a compatible change. But typically adding a new field, like a completely new field, is always a compatible change. So you don't need to do a new API version to add a field.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
sounds
goal is to, like with graduating means that you have tested this API enough that you trust that you will not remove fields, like, and until you want to take an overhead of releasing version 2. So if you have an idea about changes, you should test them in beta and only like wait enough releases for feedback, and to only then be sure that you're not making changes. So the idea original about making to GA was, okay, no one requested any changes, we can GA at this state, but with changes we need to like cook them and verify that everything is like it makes sense.
Yes.
So the best would actually be to like do the change without going through a CAP process, and then like let's say have a 6 months, a year cycle, and then graduate to GA.
Yeah, API review, just API review, and
yeah, the API review is often separate from CAP review, but like if you're adding any substantial new fields, you probably want a CAP because you're going to need a feature flag to track the graduation of that field. Like, I think that we currently have the policy that like any new field in an API should go through the CAP process. Just because like it can be really, really difficult otherwise to like go through the whole graduation process. Like that helps us go through the steps and ensure that like any operational things that we need to do get answered, and like that we're very confident in the design and whatnot. We typically don't go and just like change APIs without CAPs. There are some exceptions to that. Like for example, some fields were added in the past release from some of the work that Patrick was doing, and one of them, like basically the field was the wrong type. And so Patrick came back and he's like, can I change the type of the field? And we said, no, you can't do that. That's a breaking change. It's like a beta API that will break the API. So like, we can't do that. But like, a thing that we could do is we could immediately deprecate the field that has the type issue and add a new field that we want people to use going forward and write documentation for that. And so like that sort of thing, that would not have to necessarily go through, like, we wouldn't need a whole CAP for that. But if we're like, I want to add this new field, and here is what it's going to do, and like, here is how we want to test it, and here's how we're going to evaluate how the field is working, that should have a CAP.
Yeah, sounds good. I think we should just then rename all these CAPs into like what we really want to do. Like for example, for the resource metrics API, we want to extend it to also expose information about the C groups. And for the others, like it's more like about actually the user experience while using the API.
So problem with those metrics is that they predecess CAP process. So we don't even have anything that we can discuss and track the changes through release process. So like, I think the idea is if we are planning to add some fields, let's create a CAP in beta, let's say, that will propose beta 2 or those changes. and then at some point, and at least have it as part of release process and be tracked. And at some point, this cap will be revisited when we will want to go to GA. And like specific like decisions about changes in each API don't make it make sense. Like we don't know for specific changes or specific API cap doesn't make sense for me because all the changes are in the same code base, like in the same code locations, with the similar users with similar goals. Like here goals being better serving, like for example, better serving auto scaling. So you need same users or same reviewers. So I don't think there is any reason to different audience. Like one case caps could be different caps for if there would be different audience to read them.
Okay, sorry to cut you off, but we are currently at time. Do we have any last quick things, follow-ups we can do on Slack? Tiny thing?
Tiny thing. The contextual logging cap currently is not at risk, but the main blocker in discussion is performance. So I wanted to ping David because contextual logging is related to tracing. So if we want to invest in either of those, we should have similar front for SIG Arch to bring that the instrumentation here is worth the cost of propagating the context or like changing the context.
Okay.
So it's just
how can I help? Do you want me to just review and provide my
feedback? If you look at the cap contextual logging, and like there is discussion started, I think, by Legit about the performance. So if you can bring
awesome.
her to the sense.
I'll take a look at that one too. I think I'm the PRR reviewer. And then one last thing before we drop. Sorry for going a couple minutes over, but I just wanted to remind everyone of deadlines. We have a soft PRR freeze next week and 1 week from now on the 27th. So that means please have your production readiness review questionnaire done by that point. It's kind of like the SLA for the PRR team, just to ensure that they have enough time to get through all of the reviews because it's a small team. And our enhancements freeze is going to be February 3rd, and that is when we're next going to meet. So if you need any help with your enhancements, let us sync asynchronously in the Slack channel or on the mailing list. Thanks for joining us, everyone, today. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.